Welcome to Below the Headline.
The political podcast that looks past the noise.
I'm your host Alicia, and I'm joined today by Benny and Ellie. So today we're going to be talking about the North-South divide. So here we've got Ellie, a lovely southerner. You've grown up in the South most of your life, and you've moved to the North for education. And so you've definitely seen both sides of the spectrum. So Benny, you've experienced both the North and the South. You've been to schools in the South of England, but of course you've been in our lovely school in the North of England for quite a few years now, I believe since year 10, is it?
Yes, yeah.
Now, I've lived in the North my entire life. I have quite some heritage of miners, as in coal miners. Yeah, so my family's obviously been based in the North my entire life, but my stepfamily are predominantly down south, and they've lived in the Cotswolds, so
Hampstead.
very different views on life. Now, living in the North my entire life, of course, I've been aware of the Southern perspective. There's a lot of stereotypes surrounding the North as being, say, dumb, uneducated, lack of technology.
It's not true.
And I have lived through this my entire life whilst living in the North. And so it's been quite stark, the contrast between what I view, you know, these beautiful places of nature and sheep, large countrysides, and yes, some places like Manchester, more built up, more developed, and the stereotypes of it being, quite frankly, third world. So, Ellie, living in the South some of your life, what has the stereotype been like, and what was predominantly your view of the North before moving up here?
Well, I don't think me personally had a view of the North because I didn't really think about it, if I'm being honest. I didn't really think about it until my dad told me that we were moving up. But I've talked to some people who still live down there, and they think that there's like very little electricity. It's quite, as you said, underdeveloped. And also, just a thing, I was talking to, ironically, my driving instructor who lives up here, who was saying that like people have said to her that the accent gives a sense of being uneducated. Not my words,
Yes,
but like
Absolutely, though, yeah, the accent plays a big part in it.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe in a lot of corporate jobs, people from, say, Scotland or the North of England get discriminated against as they are viewed as
Sometimes a Scottish accent, I think that'd be a high. It's like you're the worst of both worlds because it's not London and it's not Scotland. It's stuck in between.
Well, my stepfather's Scottish, and he used to talk about Gordon Brown, and he used to get very infuriated because he said the whole of England went against Gordon Brown because he was Scottish. So he has that very much view of the English are against the Scottish, maybe mostly because of our accent, but more so because they are viewed as possibly less intelligent, maybe undereducated, that kind of thing. And so what do we think caused this North-South divide? Now, we can go into Thatcher. So, of course, she shaped the north of Britain by shutting down the coal mines. You know, the north was an incredibly industrial place. There was many villages that relied solely on coal. And when that was shut, many people suffered and entire communities got destroyed. So that can be seen as a direct attack from the South, from a well-educated woman who, you know, was trained to become the Prime Minister, on the average working person of the North. So what do you think about this, Benny?
I don't think there's really a North-South divide in the UK. I think there's a divide between London and the rest of England. I think so. Quite a lot of the South is just infrastructure for London. I mean, obviously there's places like the Cotswolds, but I grew up in the Lake District, which was entirely filled with people who had city jobs or had jobs in, you know, Hong Kong, and then had come back to the UK and retired in relative luxury. I think that we often get it twisted between stereotypes of Northerners and Southerners, but I think there's a kind of weird contempt between London and everywhere else in London that I think really shows that divide.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting, Benny. But would you not agree that because the South is so much richer, it kind of becomes a whole place where many young people from the North tend to move? And then that traps the North in a cycle of, say, poverty or deprivation because they are unable to build up the places around them. And so, yes, people may go back in their old age to retire and have a lovely lifestyle, but until that point, the north can be very poor. I mean, looking around from where we are right now, we are surrounded by material deprivation in the whole area surrounding here. Many of the towns and villages have at least 40% deprivation rates. Because I was looking at this chart, and it was basically
She looked
talking
at
about
a chart.
this was about 5 months ago. But yeah, I was looking at the chart, and places like Blackpool, places like Burnley, places like Blackburn, they all seem to have very bad standards of living. And so, do you believe that if people were not to leave the north, it may become a lot more affluent? And do you believe that if the north was to develop a lot more, if people were to stay here and work their entire lives in high-end jobs, that it would make Britain a lot better? It would make it a lot more industrial?
What high-end jobs? Well, so
That's the
making
thing,
Britain
Benny.
industrial is that ship has sailed. But so back to your point. There's no the reason that there is such deprivation in the north is because fundamentally there are very few jobs, and what jobs there are mostly service jobs with a very low pay, such as nursing, working as a cashier, that kind of thing.
Well, precisely, Benny. So those jobs need to be created. And they can only be created if people work in the north in the first place, high-skilled, intelligent people.
Well, so that's why the difference in jobs between a place like, say, Hampshire and Lancashire is actually very small, but all the people who live in Hampshire have jobs in the city, or they have retired from the city. What were you going to say, Ellie?
I was going to say something that people who live in the parts around London, so I wouldn't usually consider them as London, but places like Hampshire, like just the general south, a lot of them identify as being from London, so I think that's what you're...
Yeah, half of the UK is just infrastructure for London. It's really insane.
And I was talking to my grandma the other day, and she was saying that most of the towns around London are dormitory towns, so everybody works in London.
Yeah, so
that's what's giving them
I think. Wait, hang on. Wimbledon is actually part of London.
I think it is. Yeah. Well, technically.
So the pricing is extortionate, though, yet they get paid so much more. And so if we were to make the country a lot more equal, and we were to somehow bring the north up to the same standard, so that, yes, everything is expensive, but it is expensive across the whole country. I mean, people have geographic mobility, and they'll be able to move from the south to the north with ease. HS2, exactly. And so it's this, basically they failed to make this high-speed rail from basically from like London to Manchester, but they didn't make it. They got to like Birmingham because they couldn't afford it in the end, because the cost was far too high.
Birmingham's like the gas station to Manchester.
So that's a big failure of the UK, but that's just bad government management. What I'm talking about is the ability for people to work from one place to another, and this is what keeps the north and the south so divided. If people from the north cannot afford to live in the south, they can never better themselves, and they cannot better their families by moving there. I said before that some people do move to the south for better work opportunities, but I believe it tends to be the very high-end, very intelligent people who are able to do that, such as, for example, from Scotland, Gordon Brown, who managed to get quite high in government as the Chancellor of the Exchequer to Prime Minister. But apart from that, the majority of people are stuck where they live, and I believe that this creates a lot of divide, and I don't think that it benefits anybody.
No one's disagreeing that there's certainly a divide, but...
Did you not say that before? There's not a north-south divide?
I said there's a London England divide.
Yeah, but London is basically the south at this point, because...
Yeah, that is true. So, really there is, I suppose.
There's a big divide.
But it's weird, because what do you consider the north... I was looking at a chart yesterday for the north and south, and it goes in like a circle, and it's not.
Nobody knows where the big nobody knows where the border really is. But it tends to kind of mellow out, doesn't it? So if you go from London and you just keep going up north, it just gets more impoverished as you go. Like, yes, there'll be the odd beautiful village that, is lovely and has lovely culture and heritage. But
and they're all for retirees who've moved out of the city.
Precisely, yeah. But the majority of places are very bad.
Are you saying that it's the north both of these cities has become sort of like a whirlpool of just like nobody can get out. It's sort of imprisoned. And
Precisely, yeah. So I think that that's the biggest problem with the North-South divide. People cannot escape it. I mean, literally generations have had to experience it. I mean, I
Well,
talked about...
people can escape, but then they're just enriching London rather than.
How
their
can they
local
escape
areas.
though, Benny?
It can. I mean, the dream of pretty much anyone is either to move to a different country. So in Lancashire, it's to move to a different country or to move to the city, get a job as a partner at a law firm.
But as I said before, Benny, it tends to just be the very elitely intelligent. I mean, do you see the average shop worker moving to London? There's no way that they can afford it.
yeah, but I think that's mostly to do with I don't know, maybe family tradition, because if that's what all they see, if their mother have stayed in the same place the whole life, if their father has stayed in the place the whole life, they're more likely to stay in the place the whole life.
Very good point. Yeah, lack of opportunity, lack of education, lack of awareness of the world around them. I mean, when I do see these people walking around these villages with no hope, they obviously don't know the wider world. They don't know the possibilities that they could have if they simply had the opportunity to do so.
I think loads of places in the north are very nice. I think we're talking too much in absolutes. Like Manchester. I've been to Manchester loads recently because it's really Birmingham as well. Cities which generally I'd have a view of as, total
Slums.
yeah.
I agree with you with Manchester, but Birmingham is not it.
Birmingham does actually have some really nice, great. They've kind of gentrified the canal now. But what I'm saying is, it's not like it's not like the north is, as you say, a total wasteland.
But Benny, I never said that. So yeah, so some areas in the north are like this. Not all of them, as I say. There are retirement villages. But a lot of parts of Manchester, can be very nice. I mean, Manchester Uni and all the people that live there. Yes, they're very young, and I believe that they have very bright futures. But let's look at the majority of the north. If you do, as I've said in examples before, if you look to Blackpool, it is not the greatest place to live.
Like you're making it sound as though I think we're overestimating the importance of politics and things in people's lives. Like generally, most people have quite good lives in the UK.
In the UK,
In
absolutely.
the UK.
No, I'm not
And
saying
I just don't think this idea of a kind of wasteland.
But Benny, comparatively, if you look at the lives of somebody living in London on a high-end job to somebody living in Blackpool. So I just want to touch on a point that Ellie made before about family connections. So I actually did ask my grandparents about this because I was quite interested a few weeks ago in anticipation for this podcast. And I asked my granddad, and I said, "Granddad, why have you lived in the north your entire life? Why is it that you haven't moved to a different part of the UK when maybe you may get paid more?" And his response was quite frankly family. All his parents, his siblings, his children, they all live in the north. And so they have no incentive to move, even if their lifestyle would be better. I asked the same thing to my uncle, and I got the same answer. I asked the same question to my grandmother, and I got the same answer. So family connections are a very big thing. And so I'm not saying it's just economic division. Of course, people have family ties. But either way, I believe that they should have options as families to move from one place to another, to which at the moment they are quite limited.
Yeah, I think infrastructure. We touched on infrastructure earlier. You were talking about HS2, which is obviously a north-south railway line. But I think the main problem with infrastructure is actually east-west infrastructure in the UK, especially in the north, is absolutely terrible because the UK is like a vortex around London. Every single transport link goes to London. So it's really, really difficult if you live in the north. Like you can get to from it's quicker to go from Manchester to London than Manchester to Sheffield.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's a really good point about transport because I could drive from school to my house and it would take 10 minutes, whereas I could take the bus and it would take me about 2 hours. Walking takes less than that. And so the transport links here are absolutely terrible. It was Labour's pledge when they came in. I won't mention the politician, but he did say that he would improve the transport. Have we seen much improvement in transport? I cannot say. But yes, the trains especially, I mean, the interval between each train is worrying. If I want to get a train to, say, Manchester, it's a little bit easier getting to Manchester than other places. But even so, the train's half an hour apart, whereas in London, of course, the tube, 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they're building a third runway. Well, they're probably not going to be able to, but they're going to try and build a third runway. They're spending money on infrastructure money.
Okay, cool. So say that they did build that one extra runway or terminal, as you say. What benefit does that have to the majority of the UK when they can't simply get from village A to village B? This is a big problem. We don't need of course we need big things such as airports to be improved, but we need smaller transport systems as well to be improved. The bus system especially.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah. If we were to get, say, a tube in the north, which I entirely doubt we would ever get, because there's just, I don't think there's any real benefit to it.
A tube in the whole of the north?
No, somewhere like Manchester.
Yeah.
Manchester's got a really nice tram line.
Yeah.
I love.
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
so
No,
nice.
the trams are very good, aren't they? But like it just shows how big the infrastructure gap is from the north to the south. You would never have a tube system in the north.
Touching on a point from before, people change their accents a lot to be more respected in society. I notice you a lot because I don't really notice your accent.
That's actually a very valid point, Ellie. I mean, yes, I was born in the north and I've lived in the north my entire life, but I haven't purposefully changed my accent. I did actually have quite a strong northern accent at first, but because of the school that I've been to, my accent's changed.
Have
due
you
to the people
noticed Adam's accent changing?
It's
He's
changed.
starting to pick up all my phrases and stuff. He's starting to say them. It's really scary.
Like what?
I'm starting to do his. It's really weird. It's like we're like gradually like
Morphing into the same person.
So this is a really good point. In fact, if the people listening to this, if you listen to another one of our podcasts where we have Adam on the show, we do have. He does have a.
Go and study him.
Quite please don't go and study him. He does have quite a northern accent, but again, over time it has changed. And so I don't think it's on purpose though, but I do like the point that Ellie made, changing it. In fact, I was told by quite a few people that I need to have a southern accent so that I'll be successful in the London game of jobs, which I found very offensive. My whole family has very northern accents, and you know they're intelligent either way.
Can I just say, this is not relevant to politics at all, but can I just say the people are so much nicer up here.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's a good point actually. Yeah, go on.
You've been to
Expand on that.
Blackpool.
People are more open to having conversations up here. Like I think it's a lot about it's a lot to do with London culture and maybe the southern of England. I don't know why. Because I don't think personally, because I grew up down south, I don't think that I am unfriendly to people. But like when I was, if you were to say hello to somebody on the street up north, there's I think there's a greater likelihood that they will say hi back, because I went down south the other week and I said hi to about 5 old ladies and they completely ignored me. No, it was really bad, and I'm like, I feel like if I was to say hi up to somebody up here, I would know their full story. I would know their kids' names. I know where they're going on holiday, and like it's just crazy because like people are definitely nicer up here. And
Okay, so that's a really interesting point, Ellie, and I did want to touch on this actually. So if we're thinking back many hundreds of years, or even thousands, we look towards, say, the Anglo-Saxons in the south and the Norse in the north. So the Norse had very strong family bonds and community. I believe that they worked together in tribes, whereas the Anglo-Saxons in the south had more of an individualist culture. And so I may be wrong, but I believe that this might have influenced today the big difference between the way that the northern people act and the southern people act. The Anglo-Saxons, because of their individualist culture, that may develop into modern London despite its growing diversity. It may just be the general attitude that people have grown up with, whereas in the north, because they have evolved from those large communities, they may have evolved into being a lot closer, a lot friendly with other people, that kind of thing. So what do we think about that?
I think another reason that this could be is because I could be wrong, but I think there's a higher population of working class
In the north, you're
in the
saying?
north.
Much
Yeah.
higher, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So working class is more working class towns, and I would maybe I would maybe there's a larger sense of community, or maybe they're more down to earth. I don't really know, but I would.
That could be a point, yeah, not
There
being
was a
overly
strong,
stuck up.
well, there was a strong kind of union culture, more so in the north than the south, and I think that's quite like people underestimate that. So you were saying earlier about how about all these transit towns around London, where your entire you're moving into London, you're doing your job, and then you're coming home and sleeping basically. And I think people underestimate how much where you live and what you do has an effect on the local community, and how much because
Ooh, that's
if
very
you're
interesting.
working if you're working a job as a cashier, you get paid a lot less, but you see the same 20 people every day. You meet your store manager, that kind of thing, and you really spend time with these people. I think it's an underestimated strength of a lot of places. I'll go out and say it. The only good thing Cameron ever did, okay? The only good thing Cameron ever said, I should say.
David Cameron, we'll talk about him.
Yes, yeah. He never got around to it, but he had, I can't remember what it's called, the big community or something. This idea of lots of measures to make people just meet each other more. Like make people, because we live it's really weird. I talk more, not more, but I talk a lot to people who I just never see. So my friend from the south who lives in Sussex, I talk to him more than most people at this school, just because he's a really good friend, But things like that, where the online world has weirdly meant that we have so many more chances to talk to people, but we meet so many less people. I think
that there's a certain amount of the South can't see past the South, because I think I was saying before that I didn't really think about the North. It was very, very rarely mentioned in my everyday life living down South. And I think that may play a big part in the North and South divide, because up here, I think people talk about the South quite often in sort of a way that's oh yeah, like in a snooty way. But I don't think that from my experience down South, I don't think anybody was ever mentioned the North above Birmingham or something.
Call me out if this isn't right, but is that not because people down south have better lives because they get paid more and they live in nicer areas? And the north, they tend to be quite salty, and that's why they always call the south. That's why they always call the south posh.
But yes, but I don't think that's the case, because I don't think they lead better lives. I think
better in the sense of monetary.
Maybe monetary, but not in the sense of happiness, because I feel like
not at all, Ellie. But if you have more money, you tend to complain a little less about the people around you. And okay, so imagine you lived in the north your entire life. I mean, and then you always see online these beautiful lives of people living down south, and you thought, oh, I wish I had that. You'd expect them to talk about it, whereas the south don't really have anything to be jealous about. That's my kind of view. That's probably why the south tend not to do it. But the thing is, I've heard a lot of southerners talk about the north. As I said at the start, undereducated, a little primal.
I feel like what you're talking about is a very specific amount, a very specific population of down south. I think that a large population of the older community, because they've seen I don't know, maybe some more politics, or the miners and stuff, are more the ones who are saying, oh yeah, this is primal, this is the north are not the same as us. And I think I don't think the younger generation really think about that. And I think it's more to do with maybe the politics at the time that they were growing up, or what was really popular and what was spoken about a lot.
Yeah, that's really good.
Do you remember that there are some really impoverished areas in the south?
Yes.
I think that Kent has more in common with Lancashire than it does with London.
So what you're saying is there isn't a north-south divide, there is a poor-rich divide.
What I'm saying is there is a London-England divide.
Okay, well that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Do subscribe.